schedule. Thank you again for coming down here to Ensenada and visit Ugly Old Goat. Ugly, thank you for organizing all of this. Hello. And we're going to mix things up a little bit. We've pretty much focused on economics, Bitcoin and economics the whole day. But we have more important issues in the world right now, and one of them, what's happening with COVID. So, this group of people here is a little bit different. We are a little bit more critical thinkers, and most of us don't watch mainstream media, so we will have a slightly different look. I really hope this is being recorded, because I can't wait to post this video online. Yes. So before we begin, let's establish some ground thoughts. So if you're gonna just raise your hand if you're gonna disagree. All right. So let's establish the fact that none of us are COVID deniers. We do believe that COVID is real. It is a virus that is affecting your respiratory system and does cause other issues. How many of the people on stage are 99% confident they've had COVID, or 100% confident if they got a test, which they may or may not agree with? If you had COVID and you're on stage right now, raise your hand.
Not 99, probably. I have probability.
Maybe. Yeah, I'm pretty sure as well. Pretty sure that I had it. How many in the audience are pretty sure they had it? Okay. And we do understand that COVID, again, ground thoughts, right? COVID doesn't affect people linearly, it affects people exponentially. The older you are, the worse health you are. Each one of those things independently COVID will affect you exponentially up to the point of death. Older you are, more unhealthy you are. If you're older and unhealthy, it could almost be a death sentence. If you're 85, 90 years old and you have other conditions and you catch COVID, you are in serious, serious trouble, okay? Now that we established that, let's just go through how we remember this whole thing started, how we see the current situation, and then we'll talk about the future. So let's talk about how it started. I'm just gonna do a brief view of my views on it. I mean, I'm old enough to remember several other viruses and borderline pandemics. You know, we had the whole Ebola scare, the swine flu, the bird flu. I mean, I'm old enough to remember all of those. And just like those other ones, I really did not think this is gonna get to this kind of level. So on March 1st, right after the Unconfiscatable Conference in Vegas, on March 1st, I flew out to Africa. March 1st, 2020. And I was supposed to travel all through Africa, and on March 20th, 2020, I canceled everything and was on the last flight back home. At first, I took it very seriously. I started wearing the mask. I had like a face shield, like a motorcycle kind of style. And but I also was reading, and even at that time, I knew that zinc and vitamin D was the real solution. That was the real solution. The mask thing, you know, yeah, I always saw people walking around in Asia wearing them, but the real solution was vitamin D and zinc. And once the more data started coming in, by end of May, by the holiday, the Memorial Day, end of May, I really thought this thing would already be over, because people would be smart enough to realize, hey, masks don't really do much. And by then, hydrochloroquine was already known about because it helps you absorb zinc. And yet, everything just went the other way. So that's kind of how it started for me. And then it was just, okay, it's going to end around the corner, it's going to end around the corner. And it just got perpetually the opposite of what real science is supposed to be doing. Now, we're going to go just this way. Guy, how do you remember it getting started? And then we're going to talk about how it's going.
Yeah, I remember probably the thing that stands out to me more than anything was like seeing on Twitter out of China what now I just think of as propaganda.
The people standing and like falling over, dying.
Like just like immediately falling over and like shaking, like just all this crazy stuff, and then you know the hazmat suit and like welding up apartment buildings. I mean, just like the amount of stuff that flew across. I was like, what the hell is going on? And like perfectly, I was really nervous and like didn't understand, you know, what degree of risk this was.
No one talks about this
They're
now.
very heavy.
Yeah, like that was just. Like, so do we think that that's how COVID was for like the first month, and then suddenly it just became what COVID is now, where 2020 on the total mortality is essentially
I can do that
no
as long
different
as
than
that
2019.
in the
But
US.
all of our response to it is that 2020 was the most horrific year that we could ever have been ever, and then 2016, oh yeah, like maybe like 2x what 2020 was. 2016 was normal as hell.
And I also remember them like dragging people into buildings and nailing those buildings shut.
Yeah.
So that policy was absorbed by the West, but not because of the people falling over, which is kind of crazy.
But then just the more exposed to it, more even people I knew got it. Like I'm in like very maybe gotten it.
You just need to
we had
telegram
a wedding, and like 4 or 5 people like back in it was April
You said you were
2020.
using Blue Wallet?
And 4 or 5 people ended up testing positive. Most of them wouldn't even gotten tested.
Next one?
They wouldn't have known. They
Yeah,
just,
yeah,
kind of had it. Like, and it's been amazing to see it, like, even particularly with people that I know in my circles, I can at least know, okay, they were positive, they had this experience, and even among them, it's really heterogeneous, like, consequences. If it's true that their test actually showed that they had a COVID infection and what they were sick with was COVID, there's been a range of people who were straight out for 2 weeks, and then somebody had the sniffles and like kind of things tasted weird, and they literally would not have gotten tested had it not been for the fact like, oh, I was
the address.
Oh, it's lunch COVID. Everybody's just talking about it.
Right.
So,
All right, let's go over to Alex. How do you remember it getting started and its progression?
Telegram.
Yeah, well, we caught up in Bali, remember in February, and
Yeah, we met up with it. Yeah, Bali in February, right before the conference.
yeah. So and then I started. I mean, I'd seen stuff on Twitter about it, right? Like, and I was like, yeah, whatever. People getting sick, and I was like, yeah, Chinese people dying. There's enough of them, so it's all good. So anyway, I didn't really give a fuck about any of that stuff. So I was just sitting there laughing, and then I went to the airport because I had to fly back. I had to fly back to Europe. So I did that, and I stopped off in Barcelona for a week, and then I went to Macedonia actually. And like I had been flying around all over the place, and Bali's like really dirty with air and pollution and all this sort of stuff. So when I actually landed in Macedonia, like I never really get sick. Like I mean, in the last 15 years, maybe 2 or 3 times, if that. And I just got hit by like extreme flu symptoms. And it was solid.
Estamos esperando que nos dijeras cómo hacerlo.
And it didn't actually occur to me that it had anything to do with COVID, because I don't watch mainstream media. Like I saw the shit on Twitter, but I didn't care. And anyway, I spent the week basically chugging ginger tea, bone broth, lemon, and sweating it out. So like just putting 100 layers on and sleeping so that I could like sweat everything out of my pores. That's usually how I give my body a fever on purpose so that it can raise the temperature and like cleanse everything. So anyway, I got better and I was all fine. And after that, so I went to Vienna for Value Big Conference, and then I was in like I started. That's when I first started seeing people go really weird. Like I went to the airport and people freaking out, flights are being cancelled. I went to this conference in Vienna and people started doing
Wait, you want
food
two?
shake.
Okay, then I need enough.
What's going on there?
$70.
And anyway, I then ended up in Berlin, and I was there. Was supposed to be for 1 week. And this is where the story gets funny. Is the hysteria was starting to decrease. That was when Bitcoin 2020 got cancelled, and I was in this apartment. I'm like, hell, I'm supposed to fly out on Friday, and then flight got cancelled, and then my Airbnb host, she freaked out because the neighbors called the cops on me because there was some music on. Like all this crap was happening, then Bitcoin crashed and collapsed, and like all of these disasters were happening sort of in one go. And then that day, this Tinder chick that I was seeing really quickly, she was like, "Oh, we're gonna catch up before you fly." I was like, "My flight's fucking cancelled. You know, I'm trying to find another Airbnb." So she's like, "Oh, it's all right. Come stay at my place for a couple of nights until you find something." I'm like, "Sure, yeah, that's fine." So I went there, and on the second day, she comes back from work saying, "Oh, someone in the office got COVID, so I put our names down for quarantine." I was like, "You what?"
What country is this?
This is Germany at this point. So I'm like, "You what?" She goes, "It's okay, you can stay here." Okay, no. So what started off as like, man, it was a trap. So for a couple of days it was fine. And what ended up happening, so like, at that point I started getting interested in this thing, like, what the fuck's going on? So I started trying to do some reading, trying to do some research. And when they announced like the lockdown, that's when like I went straight, "Oh, this is fucking insanity." And I actually wrote an article, so if anyone wants to see, it's called "Corona Didn't Cause It," and it was written March 16th, 2020, where I basically laid out, this is a fucking convenient excuse to cover up all the other bullshit that's happening in the economy, blah, blah. They're going to use it as an excuse to perpetual lockdown, and one day fucking mandate vaccines. And everyone was like, "You're a fucking psycho, blah, blah, blah."
You should resend that article on Twitter.
Yeah,
March 16th of 2020.
March 16th, 2020. And then me and Peter McCormack did the fucking podcast because he was one of the guys calling me out saying, "Oh, you know, people don't know what you're talking
He's
about."
still calling all of us out. Oh yeah. So finish up because Mechanic really wants to have a message.
So anyway, what ended up happening was for 2.5, 3 weeks, I was stuck with this fucking crazy bitch who was basically turned out to be a complete social justice warrior commie. Like she's sitting there taking fucking ketamine and drugs or whatever while she's playing puzzles, saying the government should lock everyone down in the house. I was like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like I'm sitting there working day and night like I run a business. And so I'm like getting angry because she's at home doing nothing, complaining that everyone should be locked down. I said, so what about the people who need to fucking eat and work? Because, and mind you, she was getting money from her parents and she got a $5,000 check from the government. So for her it was fine. So I started like getting angry, and I said, so how do these people pay for anything? She's like, "Oh, the government will pay for it." I was like, "So where does the government get the money?" She's like, "Well, that doesn't matter." I was like, "How the fuck does it not matter? Like, what's wrong with you?" So the first week was kind of okay. The second week we were just arguing the whole time. So then the third week I was stuck with the bitch. I had just stopped talking to her, and then she got angry because I wouldn't talk to her.
So the relationship didn't work out?
Well, yeah, and then I refused to have sex with her basically after the second week, so that really, really made her angry. So anyway, so that kind of radicalized me very early.
Yeah, that's another thing. Free good sex if you're a socialist, right? That's your fundamental human right.
She didn't get shit. So anyway, so I was radicalized very early on. There was those three things. There was getting stuck with this crazy bitch. There was my article, and then there was the 3-hour debate that I had with fucking Pedro. His dumbass position about the government has to do something. I was like, no. The only thing the government should do
Well,
is
the government's definitely doing something.
So yeah, that was my initiation. That's what I remember.
All right, let's. So I think we spent enough time talking about the history of how it started. Let's transition into where it's going and talk to recent attempting to escape the Socialist Republic of Canada, originally from the UK. Man, you just got any Australia connection? Because this is the trifecta of insanity right there.
Yeah, maybe I should just move to Sydney just to complete the Melbourne, yeah. So I don't know, like, we're transitioning. We're not talking about how it started.
Like, how did it become
How did it become this?
this bad?
Because it's a whole bunch of things. There's a lot of Stockholm syndrome going on, and a lot of people just secretly like the abuse because it means you don't have to grow up. That's fundamentally the psychology of what's going on here. If your life is completely out of your hands because you're like, oh, they just extended it another 2 weeks, this, that, and the other. It's annoying for people when people people like us come along and go, yeah, justify it or explain it, or at least, you know, look at it from first principles, is annoying because you're like, no, look, can you get out of here with that? I'm really happy sitting at home all day. I'm really happy getting checks from the government. I'm really happy not going back to my job that I hate. Like, if you've never taken responsibility for your life, COVID is just, it's divinely exquisite in that it provides you complete escape from all of that adulthood that you don't want to have to deal with, coupled with this extra sweet deal of enticing fear. Every morning, wake up. Oh, how many people have died? How many cases are there? It's all just it's so exciting because you're afraid of it. It's like a roller coaster ride for people as well. Why do I know this? Because that's how I started. That's how I started at the beginning of COVID, when the government and the World Health Organization, all they had to say about it was, this isn't a pandemic, it's fine, China is wonderful. That's all they would say. World Health Organization, every single statement would end with, by the way, we really love China's transparency, what a fantastic country China is. That's all they would really say. And I was on the other end of it, because naturally I take the opposite position to whatever the government is telling me. And I was really scared, and a lot of Bitcoiners were really scared too. And not so much on Twitter, but in Bitcoin Core, Slack, there would just be endless videos of people collapsing, you know, all this nonsense stuff. And Bitcoiners are kind of preppers anyway. We have some of that mentality that people share when they think everything's going to hell in a handbasket, so they prepare. So we were all going out, we were buying packs of batteries, ham radios, all that stuff. And at that time, everyone still thought I was crazy. Like, I was talking to my parents and they were like, it's just the flu, bro. And now you look at it the other way up. Personal experience, because I'm sorry, this is all you have to go on now is anecdotal evidence, because you cannot trust any of the data you read. My mum had the vaccine, and a couple of weeks later had to have a double heart bypass and a valve replaced in her heart. And straight after that, vaccine number 2, my whole family, no one considered questioning it. If I bring it up, these words get thrown at me: QAnon, flat Earth, all of this stuff. I'm like,
5G.
Do you believe that? I mean, I say to these people that have been cynical their whole lives, I'm like, you didn't believe them when they said Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. You knew it was bullshit. You knew it was a fucking justification for something that they wanted to do anyway. So why the hell do you believe them when it comes to these vaccinations? So to where I'm at now with it, where we're at, I think it's a sick quirk of human psychology where people love having their lives in control, under the control of other people, because people like being infantilized, and Stockholm Syndrome as well is a factor, which is people have had their lives ruined, and they don't want to believe that the sacrifice was over a complete lie and a fabrication. They want to believe that they actually sacrificed their lives for something meaningful, and that's a hard thing to take away from something, and people don't want to accept that. So I think those are the psychological phenomena that account for most of why people are just happy to watch us descend into complete authoritarianism. Couple that with a bit of ignorance, and most people have a Nazi inside them anyway. Everyone does. It's something you've got to deal with. It's not something deal with your inner Nazi. Accept it as a body that wants to control other people. You know, it's no good. Like, I learned this from Jordan Peterson. It's no good pretending that those people are Nazis. I'm great. I'm holier than thou. No, it's in everyone, and you have to keep it in check. And people don't really want to do it because you have to confront your own issues and look in the mirror. People don't want to do that either. So, to summarize, this whole thing has just made me really, really embarrassed to be a part of this species. And just to see what I'm seeing, it's not the authorities, it's the people that are letting it get away.
And it's hard to just put it all into words. Like, you would need like a 2-day monologue to explain everything that's going on, because you're like watching people struggle. Like, someone would be standing right there trying to put a mask on, come on stage just to take the mask off. Like, where's the science in that? Giacomo, try to just sum up your thoughts on what the hell is going on, and then we'll see where this discussion goes.
So I would like to stay high level and theoretical, but Aleks did just such a good job explaining the psychology behind it that I don't think I have to add anything. The only thing I have to add is that the world culture, the Western culture especially, but the global culture, was ready for a fake apocalypse. They were looking for it. It has nothing to do with a specific excuse, because they were ready for climate change apocalypse or robot takeover apocalypse. Every fucking idea they could use to justify this kind of existential rush was already ready to be welcomed by mostly everybody. You had young students marching on the streets every Friday because they have been told that we were facing extinction. So it's called Extinction Rebellion. These people are really thinking that human beings are getting extinct because of CO2. So when you already have this kind of millenarist death cult fanaticism, and I'm not ironic this time like yesterday, I'm literally meaning it, you're ready for everything. And perfect excuse. So this is the high-level view. I would like to also go into some kind of anecdotic personal experience because it was kind of fun. So like many other Bitcoiners, I have this kind of heuristics that when the government is saying something, that is wrong. It doesn't mean that the exact opposite is true, but it means that what they're saying is false. Almost every time, and it works. So when the WHO and the government, China's government was trying to say that nothing was happening, you were seeing these videos not just of people falling down, but also, if you remember, of people getting blue, like blue skin in the hospital. Do you remember those videos? Like this patient, out of 30, 20 have now a blue skin. That was incredible. And also there was like doctors disappearing because they were denouncing the virus, and the social media influencer found dead because she was actually exposing the existence of the virus. So there the theory was there is something dangerous, maybe escaped from a lab, and the government is trying to cover it up. And this was my first reaction as well, and I remember Mir asking me, is this serious? And I said, yeah, it is, because government says otherwise, so it is. And it was exactly my first reaction. Then what happened is when we were in Milan, and we were having this Bitcoin meetup with 200 people, and then Federico Tenga, an Italian Bitcoiner, good one, the inventor of the Not2X stickers, he said, okay, this is serious. But we have a better chance of surviving if we catch it before than later, because anyway the hospitals will be less full. So let's all go to have dinner at Chinatown in Milan. And so we did. So we were pretty scared, but we actually tried to inoculate ourselves with the virus in Chinatown in order to be early on in the hospital with better care.
And that is more true than people want to admit.
Yeah.
People that did catch the virus early on have a way better immunity to this virus, and this is medically already proven. This is not like me randomly guessing. There's already enough data there that if you've had COVID, you have better protection than the vaccine.
Yeah, the only flaw in the reasoning is that it's true that the hospital. My parents, we were trying to, mere parents, we were trying to caution them to be careful in February, and they were just calling us crazy conspiracy theories. Then we came back from Hawaii in March, and then we were trying to tell them to just stay quiet and rational, and we were crazy conspiracy theorists now, because we were calm and rational.
Right. All right. Ali, how do you try to like rationalize what's happening? Because it just feels like everything the government does is just wrong.
From the very, I'm the opposite. I never bought into this thing from the beginning. And everybody comes to me and says, you never bought into this at all. I said, you're right, I never did. And not that it's not real, because Eddie, who's my assistant, his mother died from it. And
Dile para que viene que se ponga que se saque el micrófono.
she actually left T1 and went to Sonora when he had the outbreak, and he couldn't, there was no point in going to see her because
Dile que se
there
acerque el
wasn't
micrófono.
go see her anyway. I mean, they were already that protected. And then we did a little, we did a little promotion to get an adventure tour. I took a lot of names, a lot of crew. We went on an adventure tour to India. And these guys were all masked up, and I said, guys, don't need a mask. But they felt like, they bought them. If you look at that video, there they are masked, and there I am with no mask. And, but then it did it home, I did get it, but more importantly, the goat lady got me, and they say, and she is a high risk because she has 500 hospitalization. We knew that she was high risk. We caught her early. The doctors knew that she was high risk. But my only experience was when she was sick and was seriously sick, and I went to go see her. First of all, my grown son Aaron, who's here, he said you can't go see her because if you do, you might get it, and then who's left? And then Alonzo, my other big son, he was sitting there. I was physically prohibited from seeing my wife who was potentially dying. I was not happy. And the only reason that they did not get my backhand is that they were my family in any other situation. If one of you would try to stop me, I would not have followed your advice.
All right, so 2 days ago, 2 or 3, I was in El Cielo, so I'm already thousands of miles away. My parents catch COVID. This is like 2 days ago, 2 or 3 days ago. And I immediately sent them all my information on ivermectin. The podcast with Joe Rogan, and the next day, I just get this barrage of mainstream media articles back at me saying how ivermectin is not effective. Like, what do you do? Like, the first real thing that helped people was hydrochloroquine, and they demonized that. Now it's, if you do any kind of critical thinking, you know that ivermectin is a better cure than hydrochloroquine was, and clearly the least invasive way of fighting COVID with enough clinical success. And yet the mainstream media is like how, like I try to stay away from conspiracy theories, but it's like sometimes simple explanations are great.
Incentives, man.
Right.
Occam's razor applies.
The Occam's razor definitely applies. The financial incentive, the fact that no one wants to admit they were wrong because not only could they lose their jobs, they can go to prison, from the doctors to the CDC to Fauci himself, to the pharmaceutical manufacturers. Then I also, again, I don't think it's a far stretch into conspiracy theory that this virus was milked to every way possible to get Trump unelected, and by putting in more, voting from home and more election rigging for the rest of the time, I think that opportunity was certainly taken. And how do you reverse this? Like, how do you stop it?
Here's the thing. So where it all stems from is, as human beings, what we do is we have values hierarchies. And if anyone's familiar with like Maslow's hierarchy or spiral dynamics, we recently did a podcast on that with Michael Krieger. When you understand how people behave, one of the base needs for people is certainty. Like that is the base fundamental need. Like you need
certainty, safety.
Certainty, exactly. So well, certainty is the need, and then you can have variations of it. So safety, security, comfort, ease, like they all sort of fit within that core human need. Now this isn't a desire, this is a need, this is a biological wired need that everyone has. Now, but that's at the bottom of the pyramid. Then you've got sort of uncertainty, you've got significance, we all need to feel different in some way, we need to feel connected, we need to grow, and we need to contribute. So you've got this sort of hierarchy of needs. Now, the base primal need is the need to feel certainty. Now, what we have done as species from the beginning of time is we take things, we take our energy, our time, our effort, and we transform our environment into something that is more comfortable, more certain, more stable, so that we can live. It's the transformation of raw nature into the garden, right? Now, what happens is, over time, the more comfortable humans become, and the less they think, the more what we end up doing is we build these institutions that emerge through comfort, to maintain comfort, and the walls of the garden that originally protected us become the walls that imprison us. And what we start to do is we start to prioritize safety and certainty over the higher order needs like growth or freedom or or discovery. So all of those things, like to grow, fundamentally, you need to move outside of what? You need to move outside of your comfort zone. Okay? So by definition, that means you need to be fucking uncomfortable. Being uncomfortable is an unsafe place to be. It's incompatible with this idea of certainty or safety. So what's happened, and I wrote about this in the thing that we did together in the Bitcoin Times in 2020. So I wrote that society has chosen to optimize for safety over freedom. And when you optimize for safety, you get a situation where step by step by step.
Yeah, you get Australia basically.
You get Australia, exactly. You know, you get this idea that each step, you know, justifies this end, and this end is some fucking, you know, false utopian idea of a perfectly safe society in which you have no uncertainty. In other words, everything is dead and stale. Do you know when you have no uncertainty? When you're fucking dead. That's the only time you have, you know, no uncertainty. So, you know, in this attempt to try and like avoid death, we've eliminated fucking life, and that is the path of safety. So when you invert that pyramid, you fuck everything up, and that's the problem right now. So until we invert the values hierarchy, none of this shit changes.
It's like a zoo, right? Like how, like this, there was like what, a 50-year period where scientists actually thought that animals in a zoo were better off than in the wild, right? Until more recently, you know what? Maybe it is better to have a nature preserve. Like it took them how many decades to figure that out?
Well, this is the classic fallacy of, you know, this is what happens when people don't understand how values, hierarchies, why they even matter in the first place. That example you just gave is actually an image in my article which says, you know, the lion on the left is, you know, safe, has food given to him, you know, doesn't have to worry about predators or this or that, and the lion on the right is, you know, out in the jungle, has to find the food, blah, blah, blah. You know, which lion would you rather be, the one in the fucking cage or the one out in the Sahara? And that's literally, you know, I think the best
And ironically, it's easier to cage a predator than a prey. Like, good luck caging a deer. A little hard.
That's it, right? If you take those two lions, you can make them choose the cage. If the lion is like a human being and capable of fear, you just have to make them scared, and then they go, I definitely want the cage, thanks. I want the healthcare, I want the food, I want the shelter. I don't want to be out in the plains of Africa.
When you think about it,
I'm too scared.
freedom is responsibility. Like to be free means that you're in charge and you got to deal with this.
And that's dangerous.
And we live in the era of how do I take responsibility for nothing? How do I have it that, like, because I tripped on the way into this room, whose fault was that? How do I point the finger at somebody else?
And taking responsibility for nothing literally extends to the current pharmaceutical space, which are not responsible for anything they put in that
It's a contract that says I'm liable for nothing. And
right.
everything goes wrong. That's the end of it.
Yeah.
I'm not. No.
That was another incredible switch. So, like the other switch, at the beginning we were the conspiracy theorists because we were scared, and then we were because we were not scared. But the other switch was the switch in correlation. Like if you have COVID, if your test is positive and you die, you always die for that, and there's always a connection, explanation. And if somebody is infected, then you can point finger exactly to understand how the infection came along. In newspaper, you can see articles like, this guy was infected at this party, but how the hell do you scientifically know that? It's impossible. But then with vaccines, so since vaccines are not something coming from outside, but this is something coming from central planning, so from our culture, our experts. Now you switch all these epistemological prior completely on its head, and now if somebody dies after a vaccine, there is no proof of correlation. I mean, if somebody dies and he has a positive swabs the day before, it was certainly died of COVID. If somebody dies for some kind of blood cloud after a vaccination, correlation is not causation.
Yeah.
I mean,
And let me, so this was today, August 11th article, that was what, yesterday, or 2 days ago. Headline, fully vaccinated man dies of COVID-19, daughter says he was cautious. Inside the article, so he died after being vaccinated. Inside the article, do you see that?
Yeah.
Doctors said the condition of the father could have been worse if he was not vaccinated.
We had that in Italy too. There was like
so much harder.
Oh yeah, there was in Italy an article like that. People are dying, but on a lighter form.
So the vaccine, you'll still end up dead, but it will be better. It won't hurt the same way. Like, so still take the vaccine. Like, what a guarantee.
Like, when do these people are going to admit that the vaccines are actually causing more harm than good?
Look, don't be an amoeba brain. Listen to what Nassim Taleb says, alright? Wear 6 masks, fucking goggles, and everything else. It's the only way to be safe.
I'd like to hear from Peter McCormack on this topic. He seems to have a very, not undigested drivel from the mainstream media, just going, oh, hello, Poppy. Listen, I wanted to ask, is anyone here, raise your hand if you think COVID, everything you're hearing about is just bullshit. Raise your hand.
Yeah.
Is there anyone here that doesn't think it's bullshit, that really thinks we need to be walking around in masks and, lockdown, extend it forever? Yeah.
I want to add one thing.
But here's the thing, but those people shouldn't be here, right? Like, if that's what you think, you should be home. You can lock down yourself. You don't need the government to lock you down if you believe in this.
If you actually think that, then take precaution. Stay in the house.
I've always, I had this argument with a stewardess on the plane, flying from Turkey to Brazil actually. And I have a medical certificate which discusses that I had asthma and lung scarring and stuff, that I can't wear a mask. So I gave this certificate to the lady at the thing. So we start, having this discussion. She's like, the mask is for everyone's safety. I said, well, the mask is not actually for my safety because it'll kill me. So it's your job to kill me. And she said, oh, hold on, let me go somewhere else and find this out. And the point that I tried to make to her is, look, if you want to wear 1 mask, 3 masks, 8 masks, if you want to wear a hazmat suit, by all means, please. I'll laugh at you, but doesn't mean that I need to. And this is the problem with that personal responsibility. So today, we've removed individual responsibility, and we've made everybody responsible in some vague, miasmic sort of manner for everybody and everything else. So in other words, no one's actually responsible for anything. And in the absolute...
socialized responsibility.
Exactly, yeah,
So that's
all
what-
collectivized.
Exactly.
Vaccine too is not for yourself. I know you're healthier, you're young, but think about the others. And masks are for the others, and everything is for the others. You don't have, because otherwise the solution is simple. If you're scared, you stay home and you see. If you're not scared, you go out, and then we see who goes better. It would be simple if everybody would just plan for themselves.
Yeah.
Instead, you have to central plan for everybody from a collective point of view.
And that removes, so then what happens is in the vacuum of responsibility, where no one is responsible, then guess who becomes responsible?
By all
The
rights,
same
guys.
the same clowns who literally everything that they touch, they fuck up. They touch healthcare, they touch fucking, the banks, they touch anything that the government touches, they fuck it up.
Schools.
Schools, education, you name it. Even the roads they can't fucking do right, which they apparently exist to build the roads, but they can't even do that right. So
But I don't think it's just them, I think it's us too. I think that this, okay, I shouldn't be here. My father was born in 1913. My grandfather fought World War I. He came back, and guess what? At the age of 5, my father almost died. The pandemic, the real pandemic. I shouldn't be here.
Spanish flu?
Yeah, Spanish flu. I've lived through several of them. I've kind of been broken and died more than once, and so I just dismissed it. I've never bought into it because I've seen so many of these, and that's what just drives me bananas. My own children have been grabbed into this thing. Everybody around me has been, and sometimes I just feel, you brought it up, it's this fear of death, and I think this generation is afraid of death. And I think that's a big part.
Yeah, you got a bunch of no's, so let's go through them.
Yeah. Yeah, so, kind of on my perspective on this now is that I don't trust any of it. I just don't. It doesn't make sense to me to do so, and the people, and I don't mean it in the context of like, oh, is there COVID or not? Like, I just don't trust that anybody has a clue to how to solve this, what would actually solve it, what solving it even looks like, and what any legitimate process to get over that hump is. I think everybody is 100% clueless. Everybody's playing a game of like, I'm the politician, so I'm going to stand up here and I'm going to say something very confidently, even though I'm kind of just...
And no one actually cares for your safety.
No.
They just want to do something to you that makes them safer.
It makes them...
Your safety is irrelevant to them.
And I just... One of the things, there are a lot of different points where just listening to the mainstream, the narrative or whatever, they constantly shifted. Just like I was just like, okay, I can't. This doesn't make any sense anymore. Like, I mean, the only reason I would listen is if, like, my whole focus was to follow the rules, and if this was a game of control. Just make sure that the people who they know what they're doing. I'm going to push it off. I'm going to let them do it, and then everybody should just listen and do whatever they say. But when they started attacking doctors and like dragging people through the mud and treating and talking about them openly like they were Nazis for saying people should take vitamin D and exercise. Like, I watched this happen when somebody's like, oh yeah, that makes sense, and then they just get absolutely destroyed in the media and treated like they're psychos. I'm like, when did vitamin D and exercise ever become bad advice?
Yeah, we're talking about like demonizing doctors for suggesting people get healthier through natural means.
Yeah, and then now I'm supposed to listen today to the same people who said don't wear masks because they don't work, and then, oh, masks are gonna solve everything. The same people who were literally, like, I mean, there was somebody collected like a bunch of images or whatever I saw on Twitter the other day of people who were like, no, are you kidding? I don't trust this vaccine. I'll never take a Trump vaccine. And then 2 months later, everybody must take the Biden vaccine. It's like, neither Trump nor Biden make vaccines. You know, like, what are you doing? And then, oh, we're going to have 2 weeks to flatten the curve. How'd that work out? We're going to have...
Yeah, that 2-year anniversary is coming.
Yeah, masks will fix it. Vaccine passports are a conspiracy theory. Vaccines will fix it. Just take
Sweden is a conspiracy theory.
Vaccine passports will now fix it. Just the number of contradictions where...
Yeah, let's talk about vaccine passports real quick. Like,
any 2-month period is just not... The whole story is completely...
Also, now the contradiction and inconsistency is getting real quick. Like every other week, the conspiracy theory of the week before will become the new normal, and you are crazy if you don't accept it. But this was always there, even if it's lower. For example, these are the same people, public health experts, that were considering very normal to lobotomize people with eye speakers for 20 years, or they were considering normal to just electrocute people with electroshock. And even before, if you think about the 30s, like we have the Scientific Racism Manifesto, where every major scientist in Italy, not just crazy random Nazis, all the major head of academics in Italy, they were signing off a manifesto about how scientific racism and racial laws were. So this is nothing new. And the point is that we think that experts, since we delegate something to them, they don't follow normal human incentives of ideology or peer pressure or corruption, but they do. And the fact that we do have to use experts, because we cannot all be experts on everything, doesn't mean that we should stop other adversarial thinking when the expert is about medicine, healthcare, or anything. The expert will be a human being, and historically, they have a medical expert had fucked up people in a worst possible way for centuries. So there is nothing new. The only thing new is speed. Like this time, the speed of craziness and of contradicting your own sentence is coming to a paradoxical extent, where actually even people who were less skeptical are either they just go full superstitious and then just stop questioning, or they actually wake up, because at this point, really, you are telling me that the conspiracy theory of yesterday is a mandatory law of today. That doesn't make any sense.
Let's talk about what we're going to do, because everyone here agrees that this is bullshit. But we need an actual fucking plan. And I'm going to share a little bit, very briefly, about what I'm trying to do here, because it's no good waking up every morning and looking at Twitter and going, oh my God, they've just done another unbelievably egregious violation of civil liberties. There's no good doing that, because that's again just weird panic porn, just like it's the flip side of this, people just looking at the statistics and going, oh, so many people are dead, so many cases. So my family, I'm saying, one thing that it seems to be logical is find the most anti-COVID cult country there is and get yourself there, and don't endorse these countries. Don't live in a country like Australia. It does not deserve you if it's going to treat you like that. Australia does not deserve functional, productive, brave human beings. They do not deserve people like that in their culture anymore. And this is the point, right, that you made. It's all about outside the comfort zone. And I'm telling you, it's so hard. Like, there are so many people that remained, sorry to Godwin's law this whole conversation, but there's so many people that remained in Germany during the rise of the Nazis. They felt what was coming. Obviously, there were the Jews saying, they're not going to kill us, just get on the train. But there were other people that were like, oh, it seems pretty bad, actually. But I've got 3 kids, I've got a job, like it's hard moving. Like so many of you I'm jealous of because so many people here are like, you know, just digital nomads and could just walk around and travel forever, and now it's a bit more annoying to do because of all the COVID measures in airports and stuff. But I've got family, I've got a kid, and we're still making the effort. And I'm not saying that to pat myself on the back, I'm just saying, be inspired, please do it. If where you live is being ridiculous, leave, they don't deserve you, and fight back against these measures in every way that you can.
We love it here, so, and
Creo que cuando hablara Ugly iba a sacar su
the
cámara.
freest place in the world, and you're gonna find out about that tomorrow.
I want to challenge this a little bit. I agree entirely that we should focus on what to do and stop just talking about what happened. I agree. I agree that moving and geographical arbitrage may be a solution. One of the reasons I find it very, very challenging, there are 2 reasons mostly. One is that the map of countries that are less aggressive about the COVID cult, they are not necessarily less aggressive about other equally bad shit.
And
For example,
their presidents seem to randomly die.
yeah, exactly. Well, that's the case exactly for Tanzania and stuff like that. But even Belarus, you go to Belarus. Yeah, Lukashenko didn't lock down. But still, I mean, in Berlin, the police will actually beat you up because you are a COVID denier. In Belarus, they will beat you up because you don't like Lukashenko. So it's not necessarily better. We have to basically overlap the COVID madness map with the previous madness map, which is not always easy to do. And the second problem is that I'm sure that this craziness will go on. But I'm not sure that the topic will remain COVID very, very long or health. For example, think about, you remember that when the problem was racism for 2 weeks, COVID has disappeared. And American doctors, they will actually applaud people, maskless, gathering in the streets in the thousands. And for a few days, there were no COVID, only racism. And now there may
there was also no COVID when Biden won. There was no COVID during the BLM protests.
So my concern is, we know that this culture of lack of responsibility, state totalitarianism, and obsessive unilateral thinking and irresponsabilization, we know that this is going to remain. But I'm not sure that the specific health-related, it will be leveraged for a while still because it's still working. So if people are still freaking out about this, they will continue. But I'm not so sure that maybe in 1 year it will be all about cyber attacks. And so maybe COVID will start or global warming again. And maybe the same country that was better with COVID, for some reason it will become worse for global warming. So I agree with you. I'm just thinking that it's very challenging and we have to actually probably take more than one approach, have some plans B in place, and probably be in the mindset of moving not just once. Like Jews, they just had to move from Germany to US and be quiet for a century because it was very clear-cut division between 2 worlds. And rich people in Russia, they just had to move to USA again and be safe from communism for a few decades. But now it's more complex than that. We have to map carefully, keep it updated, and be very dynamical, which is hard.
Yeah.
This is a Bitcoin citadels, right?
Yeah, I think when I was talking about that yesterday, I said, one of the biggest assets moving forward is not having a base, is being able to be nimble. I think So which it just talks to that. It's not just going to one place. It is being nimble. Like I've been in almost 20 countries in the last 2 years, and I've been arrested at enough airports to know like who the fucking psychopaths are. Like, and basically the outcome is they're all out of their minds, like completely out of their minds. When I was in a Central American country recently that doesn't have any testing restrictions when you come in, so my thought was they'd be a little bit more normal about it. But when you land, the Gestapo is there as well, and it was funny at one point where I was drinking water, and I mean I never wear a mask ever, until the point where like I was practically putting it on my face. But in the lineup I was drinking water, and this little little paramedic Nazi kid comes up and he's like, you can't, you have to wear a mask. I said, I'm drinking water, and I always speak the opposite language that they speak to me, just to make them angry. So then so because you have to make their life hell in the same way as they do. So like I project it back. I mean, fucking I used to be nice, but I've lost the compassion is deleted from my interaction with these pieces of shit. So anyway, I did that.
It's not how I feel about the shit coin space.
Yeah, that's it. So it was the water first, but then so after I finished drinking the water, then I got a protein bar and I started eating that really slowly. So then he came back and he's like, "You can't be eating. You have to put the mask on." And I was like, "I'm eating." So like I kept eating really slowly, and then he went and called the border force, like the passport person. And he comes like, "Is there a problem here?" I was like, "No." So eating. I said, "Do you want some?" And he said, "No." He said, "But is there any problem here?" I said, "No, there's no problem here." So he left, and then this little shit, I saw his face just like crinkle up. So he didn't get what he wanted. So then he went and called. That's exactly what it was like. So then he went and called a police officer to come, and they took me out of the line, and then they detained me, and they started questioning me. I'm sitting there listening, and like I've got the mask under here. Yeah, well, I'd finished the protein bar at that point. So then the guys, and so then this is exactly like how hypocritical this stuff is. They all surrounded me, like 4, 5, 6 cops, like to show how powerful and intelligent they are. And they start like yelling and say, "You must wear the mask and you must put it above your nose." And the guy who's telling me that, the mask is under his nose as he's yelling at me. So, and then I couldn't help it. So I was like your mask. And he fucking exploded. He's like, "You will listen. You will listen." I was like, "I'll just do what you're doing." And fucking they lost their minds. But what it showed me basically was that they're completely out of their minds. So to your point, like even the countries that are supposedly, less Corona Nazis, they're all there. So I think
There's no Corona Nazis, they're just following slightly different rules.
sorry.
They're still Corona Nazis, they're just following slightly different rules from their authorities.
Exactly. And
Also,
some of them
your
are
story-
more broke than the other, so they have to let tourists in.
Also, your story opens up another dilemma about what to do, which is the trade-off between remaining sane, and so basically speaking up and don't taking bullshit and rebel and not comply, which is important because otherwise you will end up believing every kind of superstition bullshit, and being strategical because, for example, maybe you can have a better, safer, more, this is similar to the problem about immunization and comfort zone you guys were discussing yesterday. If you stay quiet, probably you can get a better deal out of everything because if you just say yes and then turn around and remove the mask again, probably you will have a better experience. So this is probably another time preference trade-off. In the short term, complying a little bit and doing stuff in a hidden way is probably better. Like you do a hidden underground rail of rebellion. And while really speaking up is not your best chance to be left alone. But then again, in the long term, if everybody just stays quiet, everything goes worse because they overturn Windows Swift to the normality.
Yeah,
All right,
we
guys.
have, there's...
We're really low on time, so just real quick.
Maybe we can just run through and everyone can suggest a plan for how we get out of
Yeah,
this.
I was also going to try to wrap it up. Can Bitcoin help?
Bitcoin's the only thing that helps.
Certainly. But, we have, it's not really a government problem. It's not really a pandemic problem. I think we have an obedience problem. I think we have too many people that are blindly following rules and they're accepting that we're going to do these things, even though they know they don't want to. Like, and I'm guilty of this myself, of putting on my mask when I think it's absolutely idiotic. But I kind of work to like you said, put the pressure on them, make them come up to me and tell me to put it on. You're at least not going to get out of being uncomfortable of making me do something that's clearly stupid in our situation. Like I had to argue when my dad's in the hospital or whatever, and we were sitting in a waiting room that I shit you not looks like a small football field, and there were 3 of us, my mom, my brother, and me, and we were the only 3 people in there, and they say you can, and after being in there for like 5 hours, with our masks on, by ourselves in this massive room, somebody came up and says, are you all the same person? Because you can only have 2 people, and you can't sit that close together. And so that turned into a very lengthy, unhappy discussion. But
Where was this?
In my Eastern North Carolina at the hospital.
Oh.
Yeah, in the hospital waiting room. And, but I think civil disobedience.
100%.
Civil disobedience.
But it's going to be
nice, but don't obey.
Yeah. It's a fucking virtue at this point. So when I was in Germany, I stormed out of a chocolate shop because some crazy old lady next to me wearing a fucking face shield, goggles, and 3 masks. Like I was standing next to her, and she like went oh like this because I had the mask just under my nose. And instead of speaking to me, she spoke directly to the server to tell me to put the mask on. And she did, and I used my usual one. Look, I have a breathing condition, I can't do that. And then this fucking Nazi old bitch next to me, she laughed. So she could clearly understand English. And my fucking blood pressure just exploded. Like, I've never hit a granny, and I almost did. So like, I walked out of the shop, and then the girl that I was with, she freaked out. She's like, oh, how did you do that? You embarrassed me. I said, yeah, and at first I felt like bad. I was like, oh, maybe like I lost my temper. But then afterwards I thought, you know what, I'm not apologizing, because if more people actually walked out of shops like that, people would actually stop believing the bullshit. The whole reason people go with it is because they see someone else go with it, so they don't want to be the odd one out. So whether it's on a plane or a train, on the street, in the shops, wherever, don't wear the fucking mask. Make them feel fucking uncomfortable. You might feel a little bit weird, like being out of place, but it doesn't matter. We are that by being.
Yeah, that's what I do. I walk around without a mask until someone tells you to put it on, and then I make an assessment. Is it worth it?
So I think that's probably the middle ground. So I sometimes my temper gets the better of me, and so I don't assess the situation.
All right, guys, we do have to wrap it up. We do have one quick question. Let's grab the only question we can take, but then I do want to hear very quick thoughts on how Bitcoin can fix this.
Yes. So I have kind of a thought and question is, I don't know if you've ever seen Yuri Bezmenov's.
Yes.
Yeah, and he comes up with a plan of how to subvert a country, make them idiotic, dumb, lose their critical thinking skills. They can't even tell, right from wrong, obviously, but you can't deal with facts with them. And I think that's a great model to reverse engineer that, to be able to kind of
right, but that similar model was done to help Germany get back on track, but you need leaders that want to undo that. Most of our leaders want to do that.
Right. Well, and that comes back to leadership. So we just got back from the pharmacies. We had a nurse speaking to us about ivermectin and how it's helping in the hospitals and like the frontline defense. And that's a solution to the COVID problem, at least from the science I've seen. And this particular experience of talking with this nurse as well as his uncle and doctor. And the science shows that it's effective. And I think
right, I agree. But did you hear what I said earlier? Like, my parents have COVID. I am trying to convince them to go buy ivermectin. I sent them like the Joe Rogan podcast on ivermectin.
Right.
And I'm just getting replies back of them sending me mainstream articles how ivermectin is not effective.
Right. Yeah. No, we've definitely lost our critical thinking skills, but I think that's the best that we can do. I mean, you can't reason with people that are unreasonable, but at least you can get the people that are halfway there now. So I don't know. I just want to share that experience because we just got back, and that's a great example that's obviously really relevant right now, because that's how you can red pill these people back into being open-minded?
Well, we're trying. Well, right now we're trying to also do it through Twitter and some YouTube. Yeah, I want one of those masks, man.
They don't pay me, I swear. FakeMaskUSA.com. This thing, like every other mask, does nothing. But with this mask, you can breathe. And they also sell the offensively fake mask, which is literally just the outline with your face and nose just hanging out. And I wear that because they got rid of mask mandates for a little while in BC, Canada. So I wear that thing out to the supermarket every time just to rub it in everyone's face that this whole thing is a farce. Let's answer that question, hey, about how Bitcoin helps. Let's do that quickly.
Real quick. So ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine are both, they help shuttle zinc, right? Similarly, quinine was used to treat malaria, and quinine is what's used to make tonic water bitter. So you actually only need, like my understanding is you only need
Zinc in tonic water?
Yeah, zinc in tonic water is actually just as effective as hydroxychloroquine and zinc.
And you know, and I really don't know the first thing about ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine, other than the fact that there's general impressions that, you know, I know, you know, it's a malaria treatment and like all these things, and that they've been over the counter and very widely used. We know the consequences, you know, they're safe. But when they started to demonize the very notion that people should try it, like to see, and that they tried to ban hydroxychloroquine,
Yeah, they
make
did.
it impossible to get.
But it was worse than that.
What's worse?
It was worse than that. In order for them to ban it, they had to prove that it's dangerous. A drug that's been safe for everyone at any age, forever. They did a test where they used, I think it was 2 times the recommended dose of ivermectin, and they actually killed people.
That makes sense.
To prove that ivermectin is dangerous. It's like, we're going to test Tylenol, but we're going to give you 2,000 pills instead of 1. Just to see how effective Tylenol really is. That's literally what they had to do.
It's like, oh, we can't sell Tylenol.
Well, about Bitcoin and this situation, I think what is very interesting is that I think this is also the proof or an evidence that it's not a giant conspiracy. It's just people taking advantage of something for local incentive, which are crazy incentives but not really planned. One of the evidence is that this situation is very bad, but not that bad for Bitcoin specifically. If you think about it, one of the reasons that some Bitcoiners were actually on board with this lockdown bullshit is that this is actually the cyberpunk dream. Everybody stays home in front of a computer, you can only interact online, you can only buy and pay online, no more physical interaction, so this is a cyberpunk dream. So
It's also a dream for those that think the world population is overpopulated and they want to, you know, cut it down by 50%.
Yeah, but my point is that right now we have the privilege that the specific madness that was used as an excuse is not easy to turn against Bitcoin. For example, global warming, you can turn it against Bitcoin because of mining. Or cyber attacks, you can turn this fear into something against Bitcoin because cyber attackers will use Bitcoin. With COVID, we have the privilege that this madness doesn't really touch Bitcoin, at least for now. You cannot say that Bitcoin is transmitting the virus. So we have some quiet time to organize ourselves and to use Bitcoin.
Can they say that not fix this?
All right, guys.
Bitcoin fixes this.
Bitcoin fixes this because in 2 ways. First, we learn critical thinking. If people understand that all the major experts in monetary theory are absolutely 100% wrong on everything, maybe it's easier for them to understand that the same can apply with about healthcare and stuff like that. And the second way it helps is that for the first time, some critical thinking culture is also richer and more powerful. The thing we were discussing yesterday about BitMEX. Right now, you don't just have the culture of critical thinking. You also have means and money and a little bit more of power. So maybe we can have a fairer game with the adversary this time.
The one I just wanted to say was the way Bitcoin fixes this is it makes consequences. It gives decisions consequences again. At the moment, and we were saying this yesterday, is that the richer countries, and you see this, Canada, Australia, for example, New Zealand, that they have enough of an economic cushion to run a economic lie. So all decisions we make fundamentally at an individual and collective level are all economic in nature. They involve what do you do with your time, your energy, your action, and the natural resources. That's what we're doing. So by locking down, that is an abhorrent economic decision. That is a decision that reverses human progress. Now, you can do that if you have enough of a capital base to create a cushion to lie to yourself for a long enough period of time. Now, you can print some money, you can borrow from the future, you can do all this sort of stuff that gives the illusion that what you're doing with lockdowns and all this stupid, destroying other people's lives doesn't actually have an impact because you can't fucking see it. Whereas on a Bitcoin standard, you cannot cover that up. Like on a Bitcoin standard, when you lock people down, first of all, you wouldn't have that power, but let's assume you decided you ran a little citadel and you locked everyone down. Very, very quickly, the people in Citadel, like you would earn no fucking money. So the raw consequences of poor economic decision making on a Bitcoin standard hit you straight away because you can't fucking bail yourself out, you can't print your way out, you can't tax your way, you can't borrow your way out. Like it is real and raw. And that's how Bitcoin fixes this. And that's why I think, really interestingly, in the next decade, some of the more broken countries or broken jurisdictions or cities, etc., may have an advantage because they may be able to move towards reality, which is Bitcoin, sooner than some of these more affluent states, jurisdictions, and countries, which are fundamentally have a longer fuse before the bomb blows up in their own face.
I want to say one thing real quick. It's just, it became pretty obvious to me pretty quickly, and maybe we should have seen this from the beginning. It's a coronavirus, so like, when have we ever gotten rid of one of those? COVID can even be carried by animals, and anything that we've ever had that can be taken by pigs, dogs, whatever.
Anything that breathes.
Anything that breathes, if it can carry it, it's here. It's here. It's here. There's no 2 weeks, there's no lockdown, there's no mask solving it. It's simply here. So, and if you take into account that we're already supposedly with the variant, like the game of trying to control this is so hopeless. It's idiotic. Either we do this for 5 years and we lose 5 years of our lives, of hopes, of economic prosperity, of lockdowns, of civil liberties, and all this stuff, and we end at 5 years just giving up, and COVID is here, or we do that today. So how long are you going to be obedient and let this keep going on? Because it's going to be here at the end of 10 years, at the end of 5 years, or whether we stop tomorrow. And Bitcoin is the ultimate defender of the disobedient. It is the way to exit, to pull back from the system, and they can't freeze your account. It's FU money in every way, and that's how I think it's going to help. When somebody stands up, and when somebody wants to exit, when somebody wants to pull their mask down, or step out of lockdown, out of their border that they're caged in, is that there's a degree that they simply can't be controlled because they still have.
All right, guys, that's a good way to end it. We're already over by about 15-20 minutes. We gotta make way for Thank God for Bitcoin, and several of the authors are here. That's a round of applause for our panel.
Yeah, guys, and thank God for Bitcoin. We're going to try and end that before one keeps you have to bring things up. I want to announce now that I'm supposed to moderate that, but I gave it to my son Aaron because I feel he's more qualified than I am for this. And not only that, but I admire my son. He taught me forgiveness. So something that was not an easy thing for me, and I learned it through him. So you guys are ready. I'm going to hand this over to